Are we live? I think we're live. Hi, folks. Chuck Holton here. I am almost out of breath because I've been running since 8 o'clock this morning. We drove all the way down to the southern part of Israel, and now here I am back talking to myself on my balcony. The same day, we just did like 2 days worth of work, and I'm a little kind of shell-shocked actually, because it's been pretty crazy. But let me explain. I got some really good information today, and I wanted to share it with you. And so we'll jump right into it. So first of all, quick update. They released 2 more hostages tonight. There were also several what I would term ceasefire violations today, starting with a mass shooting this morning about 2 miles that direction. We drove right by it this evening, right by where it happened today. 2 Palestinian Hamas terrorists, we know now they were claimed by Hamas, jumped out of a car at a bus stop, and hey Connie, could you grab my tea right there, please? My lovely wife. Two Palestinian terrorists jumped out of a car at a bus stop and proceeded to gun down 11 people. 3 of them have since died. The terrorists also died, and that was at the hand of 2 off-duty IDF soldiers who were home on leave and 1 armed civilian. So this is the Israeli equivalent of, it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. And that's essentially what happened. That bus stop apparently has been hit more than once. It's right at the entrance to Jerusalem, and always crowded, busy area. I was trying to figure out how to get through there and ended up running the stoplight today. I hope I don't get a ticket. I hear the tickets here are pretty expensive, although it would be true to form. I tend to get tickets in just about every country I go to, and I only get back home to my mailbox about once every 3 or 4 months. So when I show up, the last time I showed up there, I think I had tickets from 4 different countries waiting on me, and they weren't all for speeding or running stoplights. Some of them were for parking, and some of them were for driving a rental car through a zone that's supposed to be for electric vehicles only. How was I supposed to know? It's Netherlands, and I don't speak Dutch, but you know, I have it's a tradition now. I get tickets everywhere I go. Kind of budget for them, you know, in the quarterly budget. So Hamas claimed this mass shooting, and does CBN cover my tickets? No, I don't ask CBN to cover my tickets. That's not right. I wouldn't ask them to do that. Unless it's for parking. I mean, a lot of times parking tickets are, like here, a parking ticket's $25, and to park your car all day is more than $25. So it's better to just get the ticket. It saves CBN money. This morning, there was, what was the other, Hezbollah fired rockets across the northern border from Lebanon today, and the IDF fired back. So my little shofar app on my phone went off for the first time since Saturday, and that was unfortunate, but yeah, we kind of expected that to happen. Hamas is, we learned a lot today about Hamas. Hang on a sec. We learned a lot today about Hamas and what their tactics are in Gaza, and what kind of things we can expect to see. Why are they not stopping the ceasefire? Well, they're trying to get as many of the hostages out as they can. That's why. And even though Hamas has broken the ceasefire half a dozen times, they're not doing that. So they did get, like I say, 2 more out tonight. Now, I got up early this morning and drove down to attend a briefing at a military base only a few miles from the border with Gaza. Pretty large military base. They've got a training area there that they call Little Gaza. That's very interesting. It's a bunch of, block buildings, concrete buildings, narrow streets, alleyways, tunnels, all that stuff, all built in there for these guys to train on. Talking to the soldiers, what they said is that going into Gaza, the real thing, is much, much different, though, because it's just all rubble. And rubble presents its own challenges, apart from the geometric challenges of fighting in an urban environment. I said geometric, yes, like math. That's really what urban fighting is all about. It's all about geometry. When you think about going into an urban environment, and think about high-rise buildings on both sides of the street with lots of windows and maybe holes in the walls, and then buildings back behind those buildings that you can see as you pass through, with side streets and alleyways and things like that. If you start thinking about all the different angles from which you could be shot, it's enough to make you want to turn around and go home. Oh, thank you. The additional angles that you get when it's nothing but rubble, you don't have the high angle, problem, because a lot of the buildings have been reduced to rubble, but not all of the buildings have been taken down. So there are still high angles that you can get shot from, but lots more places on a lower level that you can get shot from. And so these guys have been learning fast. They did learn already. Many of the guys that were in the first wave going in to fight in Gaza had already been to Gaza before in 2014. And they learned from that war that if you get shot at from this building, you don't just go toward that building and try to take it out. Because what will happen is the Hamas fighters will shoot at you from this building and then drop into tunnels and go underneath you. And so about the time you get to the building they were shooting at you from and go inside it, the Hamas fighters detonate it, and boom, that building gets blown up and all of your guys get killed. So they've learned not to do that. They just drop the building with a JDAM or something with a bomb. Now, if they get shot at from a building, they just demolish that building, just total it. But they're still... This is what's amazing. Now, first of all, I was frustrated by the briefings that we got today because, as I mentioned before on my podcast, it was kind of death by PowerPoint. I did a 45-minute podcast this morning on my channel over on the Hot Zone here on YouTube, where we were just driving through the southern Israel. And I was with my cameraman, and he's Israeli, so he had some very good insights on what we were seeing and the history of the area and things like that. So I encourage you to go watch that one over on the Hot Zone. But we went to this briefing, and they put us like 50 journalists in this room, and then they said, okay, this is all off the record. You can't attribute any of this. And it's like, well, what's the point of you talking to us if we literally can't even share anything that you're saying? But there were 3 presenters, and 2 of them we can talk about. The first one we can't. Go figure. And the weird thing is, the PowerPoint that the first guy showed us, they said they would actually provide to us so that we could use it. So the PowerPoint that he talked about is available, but what he said about it was not. I don't know. Go figure. He's an IDF spokesman. And it's kind of hard to make television when you're not allowed to film anything, but suffice it to say, we learned a lot about what the IDF has been facing in Gaza. I want to share that with you. Now, first of all, the area of Beit Hanun, which is the northeasternmost suburb of Gaza City, up in the northern part of Gaza, Beit Hanun. It's a suburb of about 30,000 people. And so I just have to say, it's not a town with some military things in it. it's essentially a military base with a bunch of civilians living in and among the military base. When they started showing us the number of tunnels that they have found so far, the number of weapons caches they've found so far, the number of rocket launch sites they've found so far, and they were mapping them out for us. And they even had a map that showed the number of rockets that had been fired out of Beit Hanun toward Israel and the trajectory those rockets had taken, where they had struck and everything like that. And it looked like somebody had taken a 10-pound box of spaghetti noodles and dropped it on a map. There were just lines going everywhere, everywhere. Unbelievable how many rockets. I mean, the amount of money and time and effort that they spent making those rockets, figuring out where to aim them, digging them in, putting them in concrete, lighting, I mean, training people to use them, lighting the fuel, all that stuff. They could have built the Burj Khalifa in Gaza with that amount of effort. And what for? I mean, they haven't killed very many people in Israel with those rockets. They fired 9,000 rockets out of Gaza into Israel since October 7th. And there's been a handful of people killed. A handful of them have actually landed on something that it damaged. Most of them get shot down or land out in a field somewhere where it doesn't hurt anything. So they've spent this profane amount of effort, time, money, and resources to build these rockets, and have, oh, by the way, destroyed critical infrastructure that their people needed, like water pipes and street lights, in order to make these rockets. And for what? They've gotten literally nothing out of it except pain and hardship. And this is the lesson that we've been seeing over and over and over again throughout this war. And as you look at the history between, don't give me the no sound thing. I'd be seeing a whole lot of no sound if it was more than just you. We've learned a lot about just how damaging it is to the people of Gaza and the Palestinians that live in the West Bank when they are so consumed by their hate that they expend all of their resources trying to kill the people they don't like, rather than building to improve their own society. Until until the Palestinians come to an understanding that their hatred is consuming them and destroying their way of life, nothing will change in this part of the world. Not the IDF destroying Hamas. That's not going to fix it. That's not going to fix it. I'm starting to really understand that here, that these people, not just Hamas, but the Palestinians writ large, are so just steeped in this culture of hatred that it is destroying them. It's not destroying Israel. Israel is flourishing. Obviously, it's expensive for Israel to be at war, but even still, I mean, you've got, look at this. You know, Israel is wealthy enough. They've got 250,000 people living in hotels. That hotel right there, I stayed there when I first got here, before I got this Airbnb, and it's $300 a night per room. Israel is paying for 250,000 people to stay in hotels right now because they can't stay near the borders. Israel is a prosperous, flourishing country because it's not consumed by hate. But the Palestinians are completely consumed by hate. How do let's give you some examples. We heard from this one hostage that was released, the one Israeli adult male hostage that was released, a Russian guy, that he was held in an attic of a house for the entire time he was incarcerated there in Gaza. The guy that held him there was a 50-something-year-old man with 10 children in the house. There were 10 children in the house. And this guy was locked in the attic for 50 days and fed bread and water. It turns out the guy holding him was not a Hamas fighter. He was a teacher at the UN school, being paid a salary by the United Nations, 28% of which, their budget, is provided by the United States. So about a quarter of that, if you want to look at it that way, about a quarter of that Palestinian man's salary is being paid by you and me, Americans, our tax dollars at work. He's a UN employee, and he was holding a hostage for Hamas. We saw video today of a UN school that they came across in Bet Hanun. And it has a plaque on the wall that says, this school was built by a generous contribution from the United Nations UNWRA or whatever. And again, that's money that's provided in large part by the United States. And in that school, they found weapons, they found grenades, explosives, mines, rockets, and a terror tunnel entrance that led to the whole network of tunnels. This is a school that was built and staffed by you and me, and it's being used for terrorist purposes. And under the law of war, that makes that school a legitimate military target, meaning the IDF can blow that thing up and level it, and they don't get to have that school anymore. Now, after the first guy that we talked to got done with his off-the-record thing, we heard from a IDF lawyer, which was kind of like, I was back there like rolling my eyes like, oh geez. I mean, I was a sergeant, I was a non-commissioned officer in the US Army, and whenever they brought in a lawyer to talk to us, it was like, oh, just shoot me now, you know. I'd rather carve my eye out with a spoon than listen to a lawyer for 10 minutes. My son-in-law is a lawyer and just joined the Army and is a JAG, well, just like a year ago, joined the Army and is a JAG officer now at Fort Bragg, and he's that guy. He's the guy that would make all of the non-commissioned officers go, oh geez, do we have to listen to this? You know, we want to go shoot people in the face, and you're going to tell us all the terms and conditions. You know, you're going to bring out the long sheet of paper and make us read through all the rules of engagement and everything. Like, we don't want to do that. We just want to shoot bad people. But this lady was actually kind of interesting. She said there are three main things that they have to look at under Israeli law. This is not international law now. This is Israeli law when it comes to the rules of armed combat. That the commander of the unit, as they're going into Gaza, and they find a target, whether that target is like somebody shooting at us from this building, or we believe that this building has something of military value, or is something of military value, or there's a rocket launcher right next to this kindergarten, whatever, or mosque. So they have to go through a three-step process. The first step being basically, is it necessary for us to destroy this to achieve our objectives, which is like to get those people to quit shooting us from there, or whatever, make it so that they can't be used as a military storage facility again. Secondly, if it is necessary for us to destroy it, we have the rule of proportionality, which is like, you know, does it make sense for us to do this? Will we get a commensurate military benefit out of blowing this building up, or this mosque, or whatever, that will make it militarily worthwhile for the amount of damage that we're going to have to cause? And third, and this is a hard and fast rule, can we do it without killing civilians? And if there's a civilian wandering around in there, it's an absolute no. Full stop, you can't do it. Now, you can imagine that Hamas knows about these laws, and without a doubt, we were told today that Hamas is taking advantage of these laws to further its purposes in Gaza, meaning it's sending little children out, sending civilians, women, whatever, go walk around this area. And so if they see people milling about an area, they pretty much know that there's something militarily significant there, because the people in Gaza are shielding Hamas from the IDF. I don't know if that makes the people brave or Hamas cowardly or what. I don't know really how to think about that, but without a doubt, the terrorists are using our sense of morality against us. Now, I just want to point out that I read a lot about, I like to read about World War II. I'm a big fan of World War II history. And I have heard of a few instances in World War II where civilians were made to ride on a tank or something so that the tank wouldn't get shot. That was typically the Germans doing that. I never heard of Americans doing that, but it was typically the Germans. But not often. That was a very rare thing. And the reason it was a very rare thing is because it didn't work. Because back then, if somebody was trying to take hostages or use human shields, the standard procedure was to definitely blow that thing up and kill the human shields. Not because we were heartless, but because we understood that if we allow them to make civilians into shields, then they're going to take more civilians and use them as shields. If we kill the civilians every time they try that, they're not going to try it anymore. So it'll happen once or twice, and then they'll realize, well, it doesn't work, because they don't care. They'll still blow you up. And then they'll stop taking hostages, and you'll save untold many more lives because you killed the hostages the first time. Now, I'm not advocating that Israel do that. I'm just pointing out that it wasn't such a problem in World War II, because we would do something like, oh, I don't know, firebomb Dresden or drop a bomb on Hiroshima. And, you know, just like, hey, your people are part of the support network that you're using to fuel your war machine and try to kill us. So we're going to kill your people, men, women, and children. Sorry, we're in. This is total war. We are in it to win it. Unfortunately, and fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, that's not the case anymore. You just can't do that anymore. And because of that, it gives a tremendous amount of power to the very people who should have it the least. And that's true whether we're talking about Hamas taking hostages at Be'eri, or these jackwagons in Panama that have been standing in the middle of the street holding their entire country hostage for a month because they're mad about a mining contract for some mine out in the jungle someplace that none of them have ever been to, and they probably couldn't find on a map. But they're mad because of the environmental damage, and so they're taking the entire country hostage in Panama. And because the government is too cowardly to essentially shoot the hostages, what I mean is, you know, just go in and go hard against those people no matter what. Like you're not going to stop traffic. You're not going to stand in the middle of the road. But because the leadership is too cowardly to send their people out to deal with the actual troublemakers, it gives power to the troublemakers. And what is I mean, you tell me, if you can think of a effective deterrent to that does not include, you know, putting on your big boy pants and facing reality and going after the bad guys no matter what, then send it to me and I'll put it up on here. We'll talk about it. But I just can't see any other way. And again, I am not advocating that they intentionally kill the hostages. I have said already that Israel has put itself in a difficult position because they have allowed Hamas to set the terms of value when it comes to the difference between an Israeli hostage and a Palestinian prisoner. When they traded 1,100 prisoners for one Israeli soldier, there was good and bad to that. They were saying to the Israeli people, you are so valuable to us that we will give up 1,000 of these guys, they're even criminals, in order to get you back. But they guaranteed that more of their own people would end up being hostages. They guaranteed it. And they are guaranteeing it again now. Because they may be able to destroy all of Hamas's infrastructure. They may be able to destroy the rocket launch sites and the arms caches and the tunnels in Gaza. But they're not going to destroy the thing that is causing all of this anyway, which is the hatred that the Palestinians have. They're not going to make the hatred any worse. And so they don't need to worry about that. They don't need to try to, kill the enemy without actually offending him, which is a problem that the United States has had for many years in Afghanistan, Iraq, and elsewhere. But they also don't need to worry they need to understand that if they put such a high value on their own people, they're going to guarantee that the next terrorist group, if it's not Hamas, it'll be somebody else, goes and takes more hostages, because Israel has made the hostages valuable, not Hamas. Israel has made them valuable and has turned them into a form of currency, right? So we learned about the legal ramifications, and then the interesting part, we got a chance to talk to a major and this guy was on the record, so we actually got interviews with him, and I will be putting those up on my podcast later today, or not today, probably tomorrow, or maybe the next day. I got more things to do tomorrow. This major was very interesting because he was showing us how they are finding the tunnels, how they're learning where the tunnels might be. He showed us a lot of pictures and videos of the way that they're, endeavoring to destroy the tunnel network. I specifically asked him the question that many of you have asked me about, why don't they just pump seawater into those tunnels? And his answer was interesting because he said, look, believe me, I have heard that one 100 times. I'm like, yeah, me too. Everybody keeps saying that. Everybody keeps saying, oh yeah, why don't they pump seawater into those tunnels and drown them out? Or sleeping gas. I get that one a lot too. He said, yeah, believe me, if it was that easy, we would have done it. We have quite a few new technologies that we are working on and we are employing in Gaza to find, fix, and destroy the tunnel network. But seawater is not one of them, and sleeping gas isn't one of them, and that's for good reason. That's all he said. Okay. Now, he did show us a video where he's like, if we find a tunnel entrance, one of the things we'll do is we put a drone over it that can see infrared, and we watch the whole area, and then we drop a bomb into that tunnel that we found, the one shaft we found, and we watch the whole area, and what you'll see, and he showed us a video of this, is on infrared, all the other tunnel entrances will light up with heat from the explosion. And so then they can go, oh, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. There are tunnel entrances all over Beit Hanun. I bet there are as many tunnel entrances as there are cars almost in Beit Hanun. I mean, so many. They're everywhere. And he said, we find them very well camouflaged in houses. We find them, you know, where they've built a tunnel, a shaft coming up to the floor of a house, but they've left it so that you actually have to dig through 6 inches of concrete in order to open it up. So they're just there ready when they need them. And he said, we find them in various different ways, and then we destroy them. And he told us that, look, we pretty much cleared out Beit Hanun of civilians. There are some civilians there. I asked him why the civilians would stay if you had told them every different way you could that you're going to destroy the place. And he said, there are some people that just want to stay. They're afraid that somebody will come and steal everything out of their house, and they think that they can just hunker down in their basement or whatever and be safe, and we'll just pass them by. The problem is we have to move them out as we go through, because they are booby trapping everything in sight. They're booby trapping doorways and entrances and windows and refrigerator doors and bodies, and everything is booby trapped. And so the infantry guys come through here and they want to sweep through real quickly and, kill the bad guys. But we have to go very, very slowly and methodically, because everything is booby trapped in Beit Hanun. And he said, during the ceasefire, he said, yeah, it's been tough on our troops, because, soldiers want to do their job. They don't want to lay around, and especially lay around in the enemy zone where they could be shot at any moment. So he said, we've held the line. We've solidified a line, and we're guarding that line. But we can sit there and watch as civilians come filtering back in to look through the rubble for their stuff. But they're also collecting intelligence on where we are and passing it on to Hamas. And they've had five IDF soldiers hit with IEDs today in Gaza. So they're starting to hit them with these improvised explosive devices now, because they've been static. They've been in one place. You stay in one place, it's really easy, really good way to get killed. In combat, you want to be moving. Movement is your friend. Moving all the time. So they've had to stay still. And he said, we've literally watched them sneaking in and building up sniper nests up in some of the buildings to shoot at us for when the ceasefire ends. We've watched them come in and start placing IEDs and booby traps and stuff all around. And so we said, so what do? Do you shoot them? And he's like, no, we can't. It would be breaking the ceasefire if we shoot at them. So we literally have to just mark where they are and what they're doing. And we just keep a really good, close eye best we can. And then once this thing kicks off, we're going to have to clear all that. And when he says clear it, what he means is we're probably going to have to just pancake like three city blocks ahead of us, all the way around us. Just pancake it all, and then go through there with bulldozers and push everything out. Because he said it's just so wired with explosives, it's unbelievable. I asked him if most of the armaments that they're finding are, Soviet era AK-47s or anything like that, or if they're finding any American-made equipment, because there have been some photographs of Hamas fighters with M16s or some kind of M4 platform rifles, American rifles, and the thought was, are they getting these rifles from Afghanistan, where we left $86 billion worth of American equipment? And he said, no, I don't think so, because we really haven't found any American equipment at all. Anything like that you've seen in pictures was likely stolen from the IDF when they came in during the attack, and or at some point earlier than that. They will, they've made attacks in the past where they've been able to get a hold of IDF equipment, which is American standard. They have older, basically all of the weapons that I carried 35 years ago in the military are now being carried by the IDF. So M16s, not M4s. There's a difference between an M16 and an M4. They look the same, but an M4 doesn't need to be cleaned near as often because it has a gas piston system in it that is a ported system that ports all of the carbon and everything out the front rather than into the chamber where it gums up the works. And the U.S. military switched over to those years ago, but the IDF still has the old ones. And in this sandy environment, those things, boy, you got to keep them very well lubricated. But he said, what we're finding, Hamas, is all AK-47s. It's all Soviet-era platform stuff. The rockets are a mix of homemade and from Soviet era, whether it's North Korea, Iran, Russia, someplace like that. He said the explosives are a mix of homemade and Soviet era stuff. So it sort of answered the question for me of, is there a big problem with weapons migrating out of Afghanistan into the Palestinian enclaves? And the answer is no. Now, they made a weapons bust today on the Jordanian border that they say is the largest weapons bust that they've ever made coming across the Jordanian border. And it was American, if I remember the story right, it was American-made weapons. It was a pretty large cache. I mean, like maybe a couple hundred weapons coming in from across the border in Jordan. They captured some actually Bedouin smugglers that were trying to bring them in and arrested those guys. And so that was not successful. But just like what we see at our southern border, for every migrant that we catch coming across illegally that the Border Patrol catches, there are some percentage of people coming across that are not being caught, that are what they call gotaways, or people they don't even know even came through because nobody even saw them. That is certainly the case here. And the weapons that were used, as a matter of fact, in the mass shooting that happened 2 miles from me, right over here at the entrance to Jerusalem today, that shot 11 people and killed 3. Well, the weapons, they showed a picture. One was an M4, or it was an AR-15 platform, so it's not an M4, it's an AR-15 platform gun. And one was like a Glock. So somebody is getting a hold of some American-made weapons over here and using them for bad purposes. But most of the fighters that they're catching in Gaza are not. That was interesting to me. Okay, then we got taken out to a parking lot out kind of on the edge of the military base down there near Gaza. And there were hundreds and hundreds of armored vehicles there. Now, most of those vehicles are basically like reserve vehicles. They have not been into Gaza this trip, or this war. They were a curious mix. American M113 armored personnel carriers. They had some self-propelled howitzers. There were a bunch of Merkava tanks and some of the infantry fighting vehicles that are specific to Israel. And then they had these very interesting sort of hodgepodge, jalopy tank-looking things without a gun on it that were essentially, I called it farmer armor. They just welded a bunch of armor plates and stuff onto this, like an old Challenger tank chassis, but without the turret on it. And then they put like some kind of lookout station where the turret used to be that they just welded on there. It was like all kind of welded together. I mean, those things look pretty survival. I mean, they definitely get your kids to soccer games on time. I'll tell you that. They're not going to have to worry about traffic in those things. They're huge. But very curious looking weapons. And they're like, you welded together the parts of about 4 different armored vehicles and made this Franken vehicle that will get your troops into combat in an urban environment safely. Very interesting. Then, as we were driving around, we left there and we went driving towards Ashkelon because I had another shoot at a hospital there in Ashkelon, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And by the way, folks, I just want to mention it. As I was driving between the military base and the hospital in Ashkelon, I filmed a live broadcast on my Hot Zone channel You can go to the Hot Zone here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. You guys put us over 50,000 subscribers yesterday, and that is a big milestone, especially in YouTube land. I didn't know that, but somebody told me that. That didn't scare me too bad. There's a police car, and he was mad because somebody was taking too long, and he turned his siren on for a second right below me. So I did a live as we went from the military base and to the hospital. And so you can see what southern Israel looks like. And you can see, you know, like there was a crop duster that was coming right over our heads and was spraying Roundup all over us. I'm going to die of cancer. But it was really fun to watch. It was really cool, man. That guy's a stud. He was missing power lines by just mere feet. And it was really cool. But there was also a tremendous amount of armor that was being moved around, and not just armor, but other war material, Humvees, trucks, ammunition, artillery shells, things like that, being moved all around because we're right on the eastern edge of Gaza. And so they're moving stuff into place. And that's not a surprise. I'm not, by telling you that, I'm not revealing anything that people don't need to know. Several people that watched the live over on my podcast said, you know, oh, I can see the armor go by in the windows. Yeah, I know, but again, that's not going to give away anything that's going to get anybody in trouble or get any IDF soldiers hurt. It's fine. I wasn't showing the armor because, you know, I'm not supposed to broadcast live the armor and in a place where people would know where it is. Just saying I'm in southern Lebanon, you're not going to be able to pinpoint that. And by the time you did, that armor's not there anymore because it's on a truck and it's moving 50 miles an hour, you know, to go somewhere else. But I was surprised to see that none of the armor that I saw today in the parking lot, moving around on trucks, and then we saw what they call like an LSA, logistical support activity, like a supply base right on the front line that had, when I was there right before the invasion started, probably had 400 tanks staged there. Now there's maybe 100 left. I was specifically looking for damaged or destroyed equipment coming out of Gaza. Why? Because there are these two commentators that people ask me about all the time, Colonel McGregor and a guy named Scott Ritter. And I'm kind of not a fan of either of these guys because I spent 6 months in Ukraine, reporting with troops there, going out to the front lines, all over from north to south, east to west, covering the whole war. And I was listening to Ritter and McGregor saying how Ukraine is about to collapse and the people there hate the government and there are no men left in Ukraine and yada, yada, yada. You know, everything they said. McGregor was saying one time, you know, Kherson is Russian territory. It's never going to go back to being Ukraine. And like 4 days later, Ukraine retook Kherson, and I was there right after it happened and was in Kherson. And I mean, so he's been totally wrong on everything he said. Literally, I have not seen either of those guys say one thing correct about Ukraine. And so now they're talking about Israel, and I watched them on YouTube the other day, and sure enough, they're both predicting that Israel is going to lose. They're saying that Israel has been absolutely decimated on the battlefield and that they're losing thousands of soldiers in Gaza and that their tanks are being wiped out by the dozens every day. And so I'm like, okay, you know, I need to check on this. So while I was down there, I was specifically looking for destroyed, damaged tanks moving around because in Ukraine, when you go out to the front line, you do see damaged tanks, both Russian and Ukrainian, going back toward the rear to get fixed up and put back together and sent back out to the front lines. I saw one piece of armor today that had a fender ripped off of it, which wouldn't have made it not usable. They were dirty. You could tell they had just come out of the field. and they were being moved around to other parts. But by looking at them as they, sitting at a stoplight right behind them, I'm looking at it and I'm going, that thing's intact. There's nothing wrong with that tank. And so what I saw today disproved what McGregor and Ritter had to say. They were completely wrong, and I'm not surprised by that because they were completely wrong about everything in Ukraine as well. I also, because of their claims that the soldiers in the IDF are getting murdered by the thousands in Gaza, we went to a hospital in Ashkelon, which is only 5 miles from Gaza. It's the first hospital that you would come to. It's the closest hospital to the front lines. And so the most urgent cases are coming there. The IDF released today statistics about the number of wounded. That's the first time we've seen that in this war. And they say they've had about 2,000 soldiers that have been wounded in combat since the invasion started. But there are only about 300 of them in the hospital. And that means that 1,700 of these soldiers were lightly wounded enough that they could recover at home, or, they got patched up and went right back to work, doing their job. So they're not actually in the hospital. And that's pretty commensurate with the number of deaths that they have reported. 60, in the mid-60s in combat mortality, combat death on the battlefield since the invasion started. And usually you'd have about 3 times that in wounded. That's the normal ratio in a war these days. And so to have 300 or so in the hospital and 60 few wounded, okay, that's pretty close. Makes sense. But I specifically went into the hospital and asked the head. I interviewed the head of the hospital, who's a professor and a surgeon. I interviewed a trauma surgeon and several other people in passing. And I specifically asked all of them about that. From what you're seeing, is Israel getting hurt very badly in this war? And all of them said, no. I mean, obviously it's a war. There are guys getting hurt. There are guys getting killed. And each one of those is a tragedy, but it's not out of proportion with what we expected or anything like that. So they corroborated what I was thinking, and that is that Ritter and McGregor are completely wrong in what they're saying. And they're also saying that this is going to become a regional war and that Iran and everybody's going to join the war. I don't think that's going to happen. So I just wanted to give you that context so you understood. Now, if you want to hear a really cool story from the hospital today, as I had just finished interviewing the head of the hospital, who is a very famous surgeon here in Israel. He's been all over the news. He's a very humble guy and has been essentially living at the hospital for the last 50 plus days since he said, he took me into the operating room, this one big open operating room they have. It's like for, many operations at once. And he said, we had 378 people come in right away on October 7th. We were the first place where they started bringing the casualties from Sderot and from Be'eri and all those places. They were bringing them in to us. They were also taking them to Beersheba and elsewhere, but we got 378 of them right away on the 7th. And I said, that's a mass casualty event. And he said, no, that's a mega mass casualty event for us. That is beyond anything we've ever seen. He said, it was so insane here that you couldn't hardly walk on the floors because they were just rivers of blood on the floor. And it made everything all slippery, and we, trying to do our job and slipping in the blood on the floor. He said it was horrific. It was horrific. He said, our psychologists need psychologists for what they saw. He said, look, I want the whole world to know, because there are people out there that are denying that this actually happened. They're denying the horrors, the barbarity of what took place on October 7th. They're saying that Hamas only targeted the military. He said, I want to bear witness to what I saw. And what I saw was absolute barbarity. You could tell from, I mean, we've seen lots of rocket wounds because we live in Ashkelon. Ashkelon has been receiving rockets for more than a decade. And hang on a sec. Connie, can I get some more tea, please? We've been seeing rockets for more than a decade. Just a second. And so we know what shrapnel wounds look like, and we know how to deal with those. But he said this was beyond the pale. The wounds we were seeing after October 7th were beyond anything I have ever seen. He said people coming in here, and you could tell they weren't just shot, they weren't just, stabbed. They were intentionally humiliated by having their eyes gouged out. And I'm not even going to tell you about the stuff he was. I mean, they were showing me pictures of some of this stuff. And I'm not a squeamish person. I've seen a lot of gore in my life, but holy cow. It's hard to comprehend the barbarity that was visited on those people on October 7th. It really is. It's just beyond comprehension. You could literally see the hatred that those fighters held. I'm not going to call them fighters. They're not warriors. They're cowards. Because when you're doing that to an old woman, you're a coward. You're not a warrior. But you could literally see from the pattern of the wounds on these women's bodies. He said we had to, we got a lot of the corpses as well. And the way that they were injured, the way that they were killed was not just meant to kill them, it was meant to humiliate them and desecrate them. And he said, I want to bear witness to that. As I finished interviewing him, I got talking to a lady I thought was a nurse because she had a different color scrubs on, and kind of a shorter lady, but she was American and she spoke obviously American English. So I got talking to her, and it turned out she was from the Bronx and worked as a surgeon there. She's from Chicago, but she worked as a surgeon. She's a trauma surgeon in New York, and she's Jewish. And when she saw what happened, she immediately just dropped everything and volunteered and came to Israel. It took a while to get her permit to work in the medical field because they're not just going to let you walk in and start doing surgery, right? It took her until the 30th of October to actually get over here and get, legal to do everything. But they assigned her to the hospital down there in Ashkelon. She said, I have learned so much. I mean, she goes, actually living in New York has prepared me very well for the kind of injuries that I saw here, because we see shooting, stabbings, and mayhem type wounds in New York all the time. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably safer in Ashkelon than it is in the Bronx. And she said, oh, without a doubt. She said, objectively, it is safer here, even with the threat of the rockets, than it is in New York City. Think about that. Think about that, Americans. It's literally safer in a war zone 5 miles from Gaza than it is in New York City. And that comes from the lady who does the trauma surgery in New York City. So she's now here doing trauma surgery, and she starts telling me all of these stories about the people that have come in. And she's like, it's just so amazing. I've just never seen anything like it. You could tell she was just struggling to even find the words. And I'm like, what? Why? What's so amazing about it? She's like, it's like the bullets go out of their way to miss all of the vital organs in people, that in these soldiers that we're treating coming off the battlefield. She's like, we look, me and my fellow surgeons, we look at the CAT scans, we look at the MRIs, and we just shake our heads and we look at each other and go, how is this even possible? The bullet went around the femoral artery and exited without hitting anything important. Like, how is that even possible? She said, I've seen so many miracles since I've been here that I don't want to leave. If they'll let me, I'll stay here for good. She wanted to make sure that I understood that her boss back in the United States, who, Long Island Medical Center, I think, is something like that. Long Island Medical is actually paying her salary, and she's volunteering. She's not charging or costing the Israelis anything. And that's awesome that he should get recognized for that for sure. There's a bunch of screaming kids down here having fun. But if you want to see, I had already finished interviewing her when she started telling me about all that stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like, wait, I got to get this on camera. So I just pulled my iPhone out and just got her to tell me again about the miracles that she's seen over and over and over again. She's like, there was a guy that came in that literally got shot in the chest with an RPG, with a rocket-propelled grenade. These are the things that they use to take out a tank with, okay? You get shot in the chest with an RPG, you're a pink mist. That's what you are. Your hamburger splattered on the walls. That's what you are. This thing hit his plate and detonated and blew his arms off, okay? And they were just hanging by, she said, soft tissue. So there was not much left. And she thought, well, this guy, we're going to have to finish amputating this guy's arms. But she couldn't believe he was even alive. But he was still alive, but his arms were just absolutely, you know, blown to shreds. She actually showed me pictures. You don't want to see those pictures, trust me. But she said, I noticed, though, that his hands were still warm. And so I said, wait a minute, this guy's still got some blood flow here. And so they don't have the ability to do microsurgery at that hospital. So they immediately called for a chopper. And it just so happened that the chopper that had brought him in from the battlefield, which was supposed to go back to the battlefield, somebody at the helipad had just said, I don't know why, I just got this feeling that that chopper needed to stay here. So I just went out and told the pilot, like, wait a second, hang on, don't leave. Had no idea why. But I just got this strong feeling that the chopper pilot needed to stay. So I told him to wait. And they called the chopper and they said, he's still on the helipad. And so they rushed this guy back out to the helipad, put him back on that helicopter. They flew him to a better hospital in Tel Aviv. They did the microsurgery on this guy and they saved both of his arms. This is a guy that should have been in little pieces, blown to bits by an RPG. And he survived because of his body armor and because of the microsurgery they were able to perform at the hospital in Tel Aviv. And he's already, like, his arms, he's going to be able to keep his arms. Like, the surgery was successful. Mind-boggling stuff. So I filmed that with my iPhone. I can't show it to you on this medium because I'm just talking on my phone here. But you can go, what I did is I put it on my webpage. So you can go to chuckholton.com. Chuck Holton, HOLTON.com. It'll take you to my locals page, which is chuckholton.locals.com. And it's the first thing on there. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to pay anything. You can go and watch that interview with just a couple minutes of her telling about the miracles that she's seen. I would recommend that you do that. And of course, you can support my work there if you want. That's fine, and we love it. We will try to use it for good cause if you want to support us over there. Anyway, it was an amazing day. And there was more that, you know, I'll have to save for the next time because I've got work to do here. And I'm watching the clock and I'm gonna have to go. But without a doubt, the IDF is making big preparations to continue this fight. Now, let me just add, Anthony Blinken showed up today, and from the reports coming out of his meeting with Netanyahu, it was not a comfortable meeting. It was an awkward meeting because Blinken was literally trying to command Netanyahu that you will not restart this war, that you will take more aid to the Palestinians. Now, I showed yesterday, you can see this video on my webpage, chuckholton.com, as well. Scroll down a little bit. There's a video, a drone shot of this massive line of trucks full of aid that are going into Gaza. And if you watch that video, it'll show them spot checking the trucks, just checking a little bit, a bag here and there, you know, to make sure that it's aid. There's no way they can check all that aid. I don't see any way that they could ensure that there's no ammunition, explosives, rockets, anything going in on those trucks hidden in that aid. You watch the video and you make up your own mind. You tell me what you think. But Anthony Blinken came and said, you will not restart the war. You will give more trucks of aid to Gaza, and you will ensure that the people there get, and Netanyahu's just like blink, blink, blink. Now, I'm much less a fan of Bibi Netanyahu since I read his book about how to defeat terrorism, because it turns out he's not a real fan of things like liberty. He's a big World Economic Forum radical as far as I'm concerned. And we kind of knew that already, but I mean, you hear the things that he says disparaging the Second Amendment, and you go wow, I don't like him as much as I did before. But he was not happy with what Blinken said. And from what I saw on the front line, not the front line, that was nowhere near the front line, what I saw down near the border with Gaza today, they are preparing for a very big push. Now, they pulled a lot of their tanks and stuff out and just kind of solidified their lines before, because to leave them all in there is very risky and expensive. The longer your troops are on the battlefield, the more likely it is they're going to get hurt. So you want to get them out. A lot of them have had a chance to go home and visit loved ones, take time off. It's nice that Israel's so small. They can drive home and high-five their family and then get back to work, But they're going to have to re-clear a lot of that ground because civilians have been all over that ground. And any place that any Gazan civilian has been is going to be suspect now to the fact that there's likelihood there's an IED planted there. And so they're going to have to kind of retake all the ground that they had already taken, which is going to take a while. But then going into southern Gaza is going to be a whole different thing. Now, let me encourage you to do me a favor right now. If you like the reporting that I'm giving you here, this sort of long form, sort of conversational approach, would you please go hit that like thing right now and let's jump those likes up. What that does is that helps YouTube know that more people want to see this reporting, and it really helps get our message out to more people. And I'm hearing from all kinds of people that are new viewers that have never watched CBN before. And let me just tell you about one person who contacted me the other day, because this is just what it's all about for me. There was a lady that contacted me on, just made a comment, and she said, I never watched CBN before. I was an agnostic, but now watching your news coverage, I've become a Christian. Now, forget about the news, forget about the war. That made an eternal difference in somebody's life. And that eternal difference means that there's a party going on in heaven right now for that lady. And I pray that she comes to understand that God has a plan for her life, just as He has a plan for your life and a plan for my life. And that everything you're going through now, everything that you've gone through in your whole life, is serving to bring you to the point where you are right now so that you can get to know God a little bit better. And that is His will for you, that you get to know Him. He wants to know you and be intimately connected to you. And sometimes that comes through hardship. So I want to pray right now. I'm going to ask I'm going to answer a couple of questions because there's been a ton of stuff going by. I feel bad just having all this one way. I really like it when I can actually talk to some of you guys on here. Let's see if you have a question. Let's see, if you have a question, go ahead and ask it. Let me look and see if the guys are asking any. Are Palestinian Hamas prisoners being released in the West Bank? Yes, they are. Palestinian Hamas prisoners are being released in the West Bank, and that's not a good thing. They are not being released in Gaza, just in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. Let's see. A few people are asking about the mom and 2 children who were taken hostage. The update is their bodies have been turned over to the IDF tonight. That's the last thing I heard. There was word from Hamas that this family with the little 11-month-old baby and the other kids and the mom, and the dad was taken off. The last he was seen, he was being beaten in the head with a hammer. he's likely dead as well. We don't know his disposition, but they did turn over the bodies of the mom and the children today. And what a heartbreak that is. And I think that may serve to restart this conflict, to restart the war here. So very, very sad. I hate to leave it on that note. When does this current ceasefire end again? They're taking it day by day right now. I would say it is likely going to end very shortly. What about the West Bank and the potential for an October 7th from there? There is a big potential for an October 7th attack from the West Bank. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were trying to bring in those weapons from Jordan, because they're trying to beef up their, they've got plenty of weapons in the West Bank, but they're trying to beef them up to actually have a big attack. And I think it's likely, not just possible, but likely that we will see a much larger attack in Israel coming out of the West Bank before long. Okay, there was a question there. Yeah, it's really, really awful about that poor family. Why do Palestinians say Israel wants genocide when it's Palestinians crying from the river to the sea? Well, like the Black Lives Matter and a lot of leftists, they often accuse their adversary of doing the very thing that they themselves are doing. What did you think of Elon Musk? I'll talk about that on my podcast tomorrow, if you like, because that's more in the realm of opinion. Okay, let's see. Such great stories of God's miracles. Any update on the Jerusalem terrorist attack? Just that 3 people have died, 11 people were shot. They're already having the funerals for some of the Jews who were killed because they believe in burying them as quickly as possible. Is there any news about the woman who gave birth after being taken hostage? Only that she went back to Thailand, and I don't believe she was actually pregnant. We haven't heard anything about an actual baby from her. The family, the mom with the 3 little babies or whatever, and the 11-month-old baby, they were killed. And we don't know much more about it, about when or how, or if they were taken hostage and they died in captivity or whatever yet. But they were killed, and their bodies were turned over to the IDF today. Very, very sad. We've been praying for them for many days. Are you also Richard Rawlings? No, I'm not really. I am not Richard Rawlings, and I'm not related to Richard Rawlings, and I don't know who Richard Rawlings is. Thank you for, if you want to follow my reporting, my further reporting, not just on this topic, but on many other topics, go to the Hot Zone here on YouTube, please, and subscribe over there. And you can email me if you have a question or a comment. You can email me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. hotzoneholton@gmail.com. Scott Ritter claims an Israel civilian put a baby in the oven out of panic. Yeah, that is A, there's no way he could know that. B, I went to the place where it happened and saw the place where it happened and talked to the first responder who found the baby. Okay? That didn't happen. Scott Ritter, I'm going to avoid calling names, but he's wrong. Okay. Thank you, Virginia, for that. hotzoneholton@gmail.com. What do I think Bibi will do? I think they will go back to fighting. He can't afford not to politically here he'll get run out of town on a rail if they don't go back to fighting soon. Because they, especially after this mom and her kids come back dead, it's over. It's over. And Hezbollah broke the ceasefire today from the north. Hamas has broke the ceasefire in Gaza with bombs. And look, Hillbilly Stockpicks, you think I'm lying? You come over here and I will introduce you to the first responder who found the baby in the oven and has photographs of the baby on his phone. Okay? I saw them. He showed them to me. If you think I'm lying, come over here. I'll take you to see it. Okay? It's safe. You can come. Come on. What app do you use to show airstrikes? It's called Shofar, Tzofar. Okay. All right. Is Israel doing, whoa, too fast. Is Israel doing something to prevent problems from the West Bank? They are taking a heavy hand with what's going on in the West Bank. There have been many firefights, many airstrikes, many battles already taking place in the West Bank. mostly in Jenin and places like that. But, you know, they may have to go harder on the West Bank before this is over. What about the elderly lady who was taken hostage with her dog? I'm not exactly sure which lady you're talking about. I mean, I remember seeing the picture, but I don't remember what that lady's name was, and so I can't answer that question. Where did you get that cool jacket? This jacket is, I don't know, probably from the SHOT Show, actually. Okay, so we're not doing Ask Me Anything here. Update on the number of hostages currently. They're saying like 180 something left. Do I think America will be attacked soon? Define soon. I think America will be attacked. I don't know about what soon means. Any update on the young lady that was taken to the hospital for her leg? No. I was at the hospital today, but I was more visiting with the area where the IDF troops are being cared for. And those guys are amazing. Those IDF guys, I mean, they like, there was one guy had like all of his ribs broken, and he should not be like up walking around. They taped him up, and he's like walking around playing his guitar for his buddies and checking on all his buddies and stuff. Those guys are amazing. What is Israel doing to help the hostages overcome their mental and physical abuse? They have lots and lots of resources available to them in order to help them overcome that. There's 5,000 people online right now. Let me ask you to pray for me. We've got a situation with my family, with one of my children, that needs prayer, and I'm not going to go further than that, but would you just pray that me and my wife will know best how to deal with this situation, this difficult time. I mean, you know, we've got a family too. We got 5 kids, and stuff happens. Nobody's dying. It's not terrible, but it's just an issue that we just need some direction on. And with 5,000 people online, if all of you pray for us, I really feel that, and I really feel that we'll get good discernment for what to do about our kid. So let's pray, and we'll get out of here. All right? Lord Jesus, we just are so brokenhearted tonight for the hostages that have been that are coming back in body bags. Whether they were killed October 7th or whether they were killed, they died sometime later. We know that that in the greater scheme of things doesn't matter that much. There are people that are not going to be going home to their families. There are families that are not going to be getting their loved ones back. And that is heartbreaking. It's difficult to not be depressed by what we're hearing in many of these cases, Lord. But then at the same time, we hear about the miracles that are being performed in the hospitals here. We hear about the amazing things that are happening, and we know that you are at work, and we trust that you're at work. And we also trust, Lord, we are claiming right now what you say in the first chapter of Psalms. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He's like a tree planted by springs of water, who brings forth its fruit in season. Its leaf does not wither, and in everything he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the ways of the righteous. The ways of the wicked will perish. Father God, we are just claiming that psalm right now, that the ways of the wicked will perish. And we pray that you would give us strength and courage to keep praying and to keep trusting, and that through this process, millions of people will get closer in their walk with you, that you will be there for them and be their God when everything else is gone. Thank you that we can trust you. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, my voice is about gone. I got a lot more work to do tonight. It was over an hour. That was a long one. Some people are complaining that it goes so long. You don't have to stay on for the whole thing. You can stay on as long as you want. Come back and watch the rest later. It'll all be archived on there. Please go over to the Hot Zone at YouTube, or send me an email if you like, and go to chuckholton.com, and you can see the videos that I was talking about tonight. God bless you. We'll see you later. Take care.